Your morality is not a virtue. It is a defense mechanism. Think about nature. Does the wolf apologize for its hunger? Does the storm negotiate its intensity so it doesn't offend the landscape? No. Only humans perform goodness. We believe that if we are just good enough, spiritual enough, or kind enough, we will finally be safe from judgment. But this performance is not keeping you safe. It is the very thing that is marking you as prey to your own shadow. Every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, every time you smile when your nervous system is screaming danger, you are not being holy. You are being domesticated. If you joined us for episode 1, The Imposter, we began the surgical process of cutting away the false self. We looked at the masks we wear to survive in a world that terrified us as children. Today, we are going deeper. We are cutting into the most celebrated, reinforced, and dangerous mask of them all, the moral performer. Most of us operating in spiritual or conscious communities are exhausted. There is a deep, marrow-level fatigue that comes from holding up the weight of being a good person. We have convinced ourselves that this exhaustion is the price of empathy. We tell ourselves we are just sensitive to the world's energy. But I want you to consider a different possibility. What if your exhaustion isn't coming from the world? What if it's coming from the immense caloric energy required to suppress who you actually are? In this episode, we are going to look at the somatic cost of moral performance. We are going to see how the need to be good actually disconnects you from God, from source, and from reality. And using the logic of kintsugi, the art of golden repair, we are going to see why your badness, your cracks, and your capacity for darkness are actually the only route to true invincibility. Let's look at the mechanics of this. Why do we perform goodness? For most of us, this architecture was built before we had language. As children, we learned very quickly that specific behaviors resulted in connection and other behaviors resulted in abandonment. To be good meant to be safe. To be bad, to be loud, to be angry, or to be selfish meant to be exiled. So we split. We took everything that was unacceptable, our rage, our greed, our terror, and we shoved it into the basement. And in its place, we built a statue. A perfect, smiling, spiritual statue that never says the wrong thing, never takes up too much space, and always turns the other cheek. I spent 20 years polishing this statue. I thought I was becoming enlightened. I thought that by suppressing my judgment and forcing myself to love everyone, I was ascending. But here is the trap. When you act from a place of should, I should be nice, I should be spiritual, I should forgive, you are engaging in violence against your own nervous system. Pay attention to your body the next time you agree to something you don't want to do. The next time you listen to someone drain your energy, and you nod politely, because that's what a good person does. What happens in the gut? It tightens. What happens to the jaw? It locks. This is your biology screaming no. But your mind, programmed by the fear of abandonment, overrides it with a yes. This creates an internal civil war. You are split in two, and this is where the concept of energy vampires comes from. We think people are taking our energy, but in reality, we are handing it to them on a silver platter because we are too terrified to be seen as not nice. We are not being compassionate. We are fawning. We are acting out a trauma response and calling it spirituality. So, if being good is a trap, does that mean we should be bad? Does that mean we abandon morality? No. This is where we move into non-dualism. We are looking for something beyond the binary of good and bad. We are looking for truth. Think about the ocean. The ocean is not good. It is not bad. It is vast. It is powerful, and it is whole. It contains the calm surface and the crushing depths. It does not apologize for its storms, and it does not perform calmness to make the beach happy. It just is. The good person is a fortress. It is a rigid structure built to keep the bad out and the good in. But in physics, rigid structures break. The harder you try to be rigid in your goodness, the more brittle you become. You become a thermometer reacting to the temperature of the room, desperately trying to adjust yourself to keep everyone comfortable. I want you to become the thermostat. A thermostat doesn't care if the room is hot or cold. It holds a frequency. It dictates the reality. But you cannot do this if you are obsessed with how you are perceived. This is the paradox. Vulnerability is the ultimate armor, but not the vulnerability of "look at me, I am weak." I am talking about the vulnerability of transparency, when you have nothing to hide, when you own your selfishness, your anger, and your capacity for harm. You become impossible to blackmail. You become impossible to shame. The good person is constantly terrified of being found out. They are terrified that someone will see the cracks in the mask. But the person who has dismantled the illusion has nothing to protect. If someone says to me, "You are arrogant" or "You're selfish," I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to pull up my shield of spiritual righteousness. I can simply say, "Sometimes, yes, I am." Do you feel the difference? One is a frantic defense. The other is radical invincibility. It feels like walking naked into a storm, but I promise you, the storm is only dangerous to the things that resist it. This brings us to the hemlock. In ancient Greece, Socrates was forced to drink hemlock because he refused to stop questioning the established order. He refused to perform the role society demanded of him. He chose death over the illusion. We must drink the hemlock of our own reputation. We must be willing to let the reputation of the good person die. There is a Japanese art form called kintsugi. When a precious bowl breaks, they do not throw it away. They do not try to glue it back together so it looks invisible and perfect. They fill the cracks with gold. They highlight the break. They honor the rupture. The bowl becomes more beautiful and significantly stronger because it has been broken. Your moral performance is the attempt to hide the cracks. It is the cheap glue you smear over your trauma so nobody sees that you are damaged. But the spiritual warrior knows that the cracks are where the power lives. When you acknowledge your shadow, when you admit, "I have the capacity to be cruel. I have the capacity to be manipulative," you take those parts of yourself out of the basement. You clean them off and you integrate them. This is what Jung called shadow work, but we treat it like a weekend workshop. It is not a workshop. It is a lifestyle of brutal honesty. Why is this important for spiritual warfare? Because a demon or a negative entity or a manipulative person can only hook into you through your denial. They hook into the parts of you that you refuse to see. If you believe you are only light and love, you are blind to the darkness operating within you. You are naive, and in nature, the naive are eaten. But if you know your darkness, if you have filled those cracks with the gold of awareness, there is no handle for the enemy to grab. You become smooth. You become whole. So, how do we dismantle this? How do we stop performing? It requires somatic softening. For the next week, I want you to try an experiment. It will feel counterintuitive. It will feel dangerous. Notice when you are performing. Notice when you put on the customer service voice in your spiritual life. Notice when you agree to things that make your stomach turn. When you catch yourself doing this, I want you to stop. Physically stop, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and ask yourself, what is true right now? Maybe the truth is, I don't want to help you. Maybe the truth is, I am angry. You don't necessarily have to say these words out loud to the person, though that is advanced practice, but you must admit them to yourself. You must break the seal of perfection. Every time you acknowledge your inner reality over your external performance, you are pouring gold into the cracks. You are retrieving your soul from the cage of goodness. The goal of this series is not to make you a better person. It is to make you a real person. The world has enough good people who are secretly seething with resentment. The world has enough spiritual masks hiding terrified children. What we need, what the universe is actually asking for, are people who are whole, people who are formidable because they have nothing left to hide. This is the end of the us versus them mentality. This is the end of hiding. I've shared a bit of the mechanics, but this work is lived, not just understood. I want to hear from you in the comments. Where have you felt the weight of this armor? Where has being good cost you your peace? Your story might just be the key that helps someone else find the courage to put down their armor. You are definitely not alone.